Marc Miller, a good friend, a former board member forever and ever, and he has now abandoned us only in body, never in their hearts, and moved to Mexico. He is the founder of a wonderful website, a podcast. He's an author, and his topic is, do you have a LinkedIn strategy? If not, you should. And he is the founder of Career Pivot, which helps those, he says he helps those in the second half of life. But his advice and what's in his book is good for everybody, I think, in any stage of their careers. It's just really good information. But he says he helps those in the second half of life design careers that they can grow into for the next 30 years. Published in 2019, Marc authored the book, Repurpose Your Career, a practical guide for the second half of life. He is also the podcast host of the award-winning Repurpose Your Career podcast. He is a recovering engineer, a potentialite, there we go, and a professional career changer with his 6 career pivots over the last 40 years. He and his wife, Lotus, became expats in 2018 when they moved to Ajijic, it's not pronounced that. Ajijic, Mexico. You can learn more about Marc, Career Pivot, the Repurpose Your Career podcast, and his and Lotus's journey to become expats by visiting Marc's website, careerpivot.com. Welcome back, our friend. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Cool. Well, welcome, everyone. Yes, I live in Mexico. But by the way, my virtual background is a picture from the roof of the house we're living in right now. We're actually closing on a house next Wednesday because we finally sold our condo in Austin, July. I'll put everybody on gallery. And by the way, your housing market there's nutsy. And it sold for way more than it should have. And just to show you, I still have my Austin, let's see if I can do this. I have my Austin cup. I lived in Austin for 40 years. And, but Shannon asked me he said, you're missing a speaker. Could you come on? And I said, sure, why not? And so I said, let's do something fun. I am very good friends with the authors of this book, LinkedIn Made Simple, Fat Strategies in a Thin Book. Let's see if I can get the go. There we go. And let me do this. There we go. I just put a link to the book on Amazon in the chat box. Normally, I don't like social media books. I love this. And the reason why is most social media books they go out of date really fast. But this is loaded with strategies. And so what I'm going to do is take you through 8 of the 107 strategies. And in most people, I find what they do is they create their LinkedIn profile and they say they're done. Well, I hate to tell you, you're not. There we go. Presenting on Zoom is always interesting. So start out with, I said, I love the book. I've had both Ryan and Andy on my podcast before. I had them on the podcast. I had them on my podcast, I don't know, early this year. Actually, Ryan was in Austin the same time I was in Austin last May. I came back to Austin in May to get vaccinated. And Ryan gave me a not for resale copy of the book, so I can't go out and sell this. And I also had Kevin Turner on my podcast late last year. And I want you to go listen to those 2 podcasts, because both of them basically take you through strategies of what you need to do after you've done your LinkedIn profile. So the reality is most people say, oh, I've got an all-star profile, I'm done. They tell you you're wrong, because that won't get you visibility. What the first strategy I want to mention is I want you to actually have a what we call a focus message. And this is this is strategy number 23 on page 21. And I'm pulling up page 21. And the idea is, at a high level, your LinkedIn profile is all about positioning, and at the heart of positioning, your message. When you update your profile, you're optimizing your message for your target audience. A focused message consists of 3 different components: brand, business, and benefit. So what is your brand? Yes, you have a brand. So a brand is a name, term, design, symbol, or other feature that identifies one seller's goods, service, or distinct from those of other sellers. In other words, what do you do? The idea is, what skills do you have to add value to your target audience? Yes, I want you to think of your LinkedIn profile as to who are you targeting. This is even before you do your LinkedIn profile. Then, from a business, what's the business? From a business standpoint, you need to know people what you do. So what the heck do you do? What's your job title? Is it descriptive? More importantly, are these terms that people search on? Marc. And the last thing is the benefit. What do you do for people? The way I like to say is, what problems do you solve for your employer? Get real clear, because that should come out in your profile. So that's strategy number 23. No, see, I've skipped over a lot of strategies here. The next page, your profile may be about you, but it's not for you. Obviously, I have a typo in there. The idea here is, when you write your profile, it's like anything else. Get other eyes on it. Get people to look at it. And by the way, it's important that you get people to look at it who you want to impress. In other words, I've had people I've had clients who sent people their profile to someone, what you think, or they send it to me, and I'm not in their target audience. I'm not qualified. So, and the big thing here is write it in first person. Yes, I know you've all been taught to write your resume in third person. Write it in first person. And also make sure and regularly save your work. And I like to say, in here they say he talks about using notifications strategically. Most of the time when you're updating your profile, you're going to have notifications turned off. I'm going to give you one more tip. Whenever you update your profile and you're ready to save, and you say, wow, this is a major update, or this is something important, turn on notifications and be prepared with a key message and an ask for when people actually respond back. Hey, I see your profile. You got a new job. You got this, whatever you've added to your profile. So I'll use the example. When I published my last version of Repurpose Your Career, I added a job title in there. I was author of Repurpose Your Career. And people would say, oh, you've got a new job. And immediately, and some people just saying, congratulations. I had a canned response that says, oh, by the way, here's the link to the book in Amazon. Would you be so kind and read it and write a review? In other words, I had an ask. Similarly, when I've put on my LinkedIn profile that I was a podcast host, and by the way, I'm up to episode 244. One of the things I did was, as soon as I updated my profile, I immediately, when people would respond, I had a response say, hey, here's a link to Apple Podcast, and would you write a review? So anytime you update your profile and you've turned notifications on, it is a wonderful opportunity to start interacting with people. And most people will give you the canned congratulations, fine, respond to it. And you might have 2 or 3 canned responses that you can cut and paste. By the way, this is easy. Okay. One of the things I want, we all tend to use search. In strategy number 39, it talks about learning how to use Boolean search. Yes, this is geeky. You need to learn how to do this, particularly if you have a free account, because this will cut down the number of searches you need to do. So why am I using Boolean search? I am looking for people I want to connect to. So I may be looking, so maybe you're a product manager and you want to, and you're interested in a product management job located with the companies in Austin, headquartered in Austin, Texas. Or maybe you're looking for product managers at certain companies. You can start doing searches and doing much more closely defined searches. Or maybe you want to look for product managers who graduated from your university, who are alumni of yours. One of the things I like to say when you're out looking to see what you want to do next is to look for people who look, taste, and smell like you. Okay, that is people who are typically doing the job you want, who have the similar background, who may or may not, be of the same age, gender, and look for people who, as I said, look, taste, and smell like you. I'll use the example. I had one member in my online community she went and got Ruby on Rails certified in her late 50s. So I told her to go search through, and she was in the DC area, to search the DC area for everyone who had Ruby on Rails in their profile. And trying to isolate down to certain zip codes. And then the only way she could figure out age was to look at pictures. And by the way, one of the things she found out is everybody who was older, who had Ruby on Rails, was employed in the DC area or working for the government or government contractors. Well, that's valuable information. So I really want, and in the book, they've got a whole bunch of tips around doing Boolean search. And I'm not going to dig into that because it's way too geeky. Okay. Because he goes in through, and I see John Rothko out there. He knows Boolean search. I know a bunch of other folks probably do too. Okay.
Yeah, Mark, and I would say it's not really geeky. It's basic logic that everybody who uses a computer ought to have at least a small grasp of.
Yes.
How are you doing? Great background, by the way.
Oh,
good to see you.
John and I had lunch a couple of weeks ago when I was in Austin. So, and by the way, this is Mount Garcia right here. This is across the other side of Lake Chapala. By the way, Lake Chapala is the largest lake in Mexico. It's about 5,000 feet. It's the size of Lake Travis. And I currently live about 3 blocks away, and when we move, I'll be a block and a half away. Okay, so that's that. So strategy number 62. Okay, show me a set of virtual hands. How many of you actually create content and post it on LinkedIn? That's about what I figured. Create, as it says, creating content helps others what it would be like to work with you. Okay. In other words, when you create content, and we'll talk about what that content might be, it goes and further defines who you are. It's an extension. So let's talk about what kind of content you can create. So they define in here a content pyramid. Okay, let's see. What to post on LinkedIn. So one of the things he talks about in strategy number 64 is come up with a consistent theme. In other words, don't post on, jobs one day, what the sky looks like the next. Come up with a theme. I'll use the example for myself. Much of the last year, I have been focused on disruption. 2/3 of what I've been writing and posting is about what's happening to the economy, what's happening to disruption in people's careers, what's happening in industry disruption, and then what you can do about it. And then also, how can you find out what disruption is going on? I spoke to Launchpad, 6 months ago about this. Come up with 1 or 2 themes that you want to write about, write, do videos, do audio. In other words, create your own voice. Now, as Randy says, you can share. You don't have to create. But if you share, express your own opinion on top of it. So this is the interesting one, the one I like. Where is my cursor? I'm on 2 screens here. There we are. The other piece is cadence. I've helped, I don't know how many people start blogs and podcasts. One of the things that you need to do, whether you are on social media, whether you're creating content, you're a YouTuber, you're a podcaster, whatever you're doing, including posting regularly on LinkedIn, I want you to come up with a schedule. And I want you to be consistent about when you're posting and the frequency. Now, by the way, I use a tool called Buffer. I schedule everything. And the reason I use Buffer, because it will measure, did anybody click on this? Or what was this effective? As far as, and as the book says, your cadence is your cadence. You have to determine how often can I post so that I can be consistent. Is this once a day? Is it 5 times a day? Is it every other day? And by the way, more is not necessarily better. It's just being consistent. And when you should post is really dependent on your audience. Now, strategy number 75. polls. Let me see a show of hands. Who's used a poll? Polls are a great way to interact with people, and they're easy. So, doing simple things like I think I did a poll about when we were coming out of a lockdown, and I simply asked, when do you think you're going to get back on a plane again? And I got some interesting responses, but also I got a lot of interesting discussion going on below it. And one of the interesting ones is to always have an other. If you add an other in, it'll usually get people to say, okay, and if you say other, please explain below. It's a way of getting interaction. When you do a poll, it's easy to start getting interaction with people. So this is one I personally don't use enough. But if you're going to do nothing else after this session, go do a poll and go look at the polls that you are seeing. And
Mark,
yeah,
be very careful about about the polls you do on Facebook, because they harvest and gather your information from Facebook polls.
oh, you betcha. I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of Facebook. And I just noticed I have an interview on Monday that I'm publishing on Pierre Frick. He's a member of my online community. And suddenly, where was it? On Facebook this morning, an article about Pierre showed up about him in Facebook. And all I did was Google his name.
Yes, we've got create a post.
Okay. So I just came in, said, create a post, and polls are right here. And then you can start to ask the question, and then you can keep on doing options. And if I look at my stream, see if I can find a poll here. Move that over there. Boy, come on. Obviously, Zoom consumes massive amounts of bandwidth. Here's a good one. How would you prioritize 3 key areas of life? Choose the option that's most important to you: health, family, career. And notice he's got 95 comments. And that's been up for 4 hours. Here's another one. I never in my whole life had an actual dentist perform an entire 6-month check and cleaning. And so he's got a whole post, and then he comes down and says, oh, who does your dental cleanings? So the whole idea here is I want you to think about essentially what you want to post. And polls they're easy. Here, I missed. Let me go back and do.
Should you always try to create a poll that has something to do with the brand that you're trying to present?
Let me go back to my slide. Are you seeing my LinkedIn screen?
Yes, we're seeing your LinkedIn screen. So this is his home, not his profile. This is his home page.
Right. So I click on start a post. Then I come down this little create a poll. We cool with that?
Yep, we're good.
And think of, and again, think about, spend some time before you do your first one. Think about the question you want to ask. And the key piece here is the one trick that's been given to me over and over again is to always have an other. Because part of what you want to do is you want to generate engagement. Okay, you have my PowerPoint slides again?
Yes, you're back to PowerPoint.
Okay. Can't tell, I don't present on Zoom a whole lot. Okay. So on strategy number 66, he talks about a content pyramid. And I like this idea. You could just simply write a short form post written. So you might just go into do a post and do a write. There, you could write a LinkedIn article, which are becoming less and less popular. You could add images. You can do just audio, and that's not so easy on LinkedIn. But you can do video. You can create a video. You can do, I'm going to start, actually this next week, I'm on a LinkedIn Live. I've been on a bunch of LinkedIn Lives. I've had people interview me. I may start doing my podcasts at least periodically as LinkedIn Lives and use that audio. One of the things I'll use my podcast as an example. My podcast, I said, I've been doing it. I'm coming up my 5th anniversary. It is my greatest networking tool I've ever had. I now can get A-list authors. And is it because I'm so great? By the way, I suck as an interviewer. I just have good conversations with people. Now, my early podcast episodes, let's put it bluntly, they sucked. You go listen to episode 1, it's really bad. I'm stiff. I'm talking to a screen. It's horrible. I leave it out there. My audio quality in my first few were not very good. My audio quality now is really good. I know all the tools to use. I've gotten much more professional, but I now have people coming to me asking to be on my podcast. But more importantly, one of the things you do with audio and video, when you put yourself out there, people start to think they know you. I know I'm a big fan of ProBlogger, Darren Rouse. And he had a great podcast. I don't know why he stopped doing his ProBlogger podcast. But one of the things he talked about was people would come up to him at conferences and walk up to him like they knew him. And they were best buddies. And he's going, what the heck's going on? And by the way, I've had that happen to me. And it's because you're in their ears. People like my podcast because I'm very personable. I mean, one of the things I've learned when I say I sucked as an interviewer, if I interview people and I have a set of questions, I stop listening. So I've found my style is just go in with a single question, and then we have a conversation. Well, when you do that, your personality comes out. So if you really want people to know who you are at your core, do audio and video. Now, is that scary? Yep. Notice you can't see this, but I got 2 big LED lights set up here. I've got a high quality microphone. I've gotten good at doing video. I still don't like doing it. By the way, GoDaddy is interviewing me this afternoon over video. Is that because I'm so great? No, I've just done a lot of it. You start doing it, you get better and better and better. So let's see. With that, I'm going to stop here. There's my book. There's my podcast. Go to careerpivot.com. I'm going to invite you, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, send me a LinkedIn connection request. And I'm linkedin.com/in/Mr. Miller. M.R. Miller. My mama gave me those initials so I'd get some respect. So with that, let's have a conversation.
I have a question.
Sure.
Usually when you come to talk to Launchpad, I buy $100 worth of your books, and I was going to buy a bunch of the LinkedIn Made Simple books, and they're not on Amazon.
Yes, they are.
Well,
the link I put in the chat box. I'll put it back. By the way, one advantage of doing an interview podcast or anything where you interview people is it builds street cred based on what they know. So, and I've had Daniel Elizalde, who's now back in Austin. He's pivoted multiple times based on his blog and his podcast. And what he's done is each time he rebranded himself by interviewing people. He switched industries by interviewing people, because people assumed that he actually knew something. And one of the things he did when he interviewed was always to make sure and have a conversation and interject something that adds value. If you listen to my podcast, I try and do that through the conversation.
huh. Well, that's funny. It wasn't in Amazon by the title, and when I put in.
Did you use the link I put in the chat box?
No, I went into Smile and I put in the title, and it didn't come up. And then I just put in Ryan Roten. And what's funny is what came up first is a whole bunch of Vlad and Nikki superhero toys.
Okay.
And then the third thing to come up is LinkedIn Made Simple. That's so funny.
Okay, so Lindsay just asked, thanks for the tips. What do you recommend for how to determine your posting themes on LinkedIn? What are you looking for? What are the current, so for example, Lindsay, what do you do?
I'm a writer.
What's that?
I'm a writer.
Okay, what do you write on?
Anything and everything, but most recently help center things about processes, but also interested in science and technology and inclusion.
Okay, I would start doing posting on the fact on those topics, and maybe point at stuff that you already have written. In other words, one of the best things you can do is say, here's a couple of easy things to do is number one, if you just written something on, diversity and inclusion, write something about, hey, this is my thoughts. This is the direction I see things going. And by the way, here's my latest article that I wrote for so-and-so. One of the things, like, for example, I'm doing a blog post on Monday based on article written by Richard Eisenberg in Marketplace on his interview of somebody else, a researcher, saying that the younger people are, the more ageist they are, based on this study. And I'm going to use that and comment on it. In other words, it's real easy. One of the easy ways to do is find an interesting article and be able to then say, here's my take on it. It's an easy way to get started. Because what it is it shows you, oh, I actually know something about this. And you don't have to recreate all the content. Now, what I didn't talk about in here, and it's in the book extensively, is using hashtags, because people do search on hashtags, or people subscribe to hashtags and it shows up in their feed. As I said, I gave you 8 of the strategies of 107. And again, the reason why I like this book is because it's all about the strategy, not based on the, LinkedIn is going to change 15 times, in the next 9 months. I actually thought about writing a LinkedIn book 6-7 years ago. And I was good friends with Viveka. God, I can't remember her last name. I just know her as a Viveka. And she was just ready to publish her first LinkedIn book, had all kinds of screenshots in it. And the week that she was ready to publish it, they changed everything. What you'll notice in the book is there's very few screenshots. It's mostly text. There's a little bit. So what other questions do people have?
Mark, I don't know if this is exactly a question. This is Karen, but maybe amusing. I've been thinking about the LinkedIn kind of the text part of it, your static statement.
Yep.
But the other part, which you're talking about, the strategy, is your ongoing story.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're connecting with the fish you like to swim with, either way, but one of them is that static, I'm going to call it artifact of what you are presenting, or business card maybe. And the other is the ongoing story of the rest of who you are.
I like that.
Okay.
That's
it's amusing. I'm working through it.
Well,
because I've not engaged much in the other side of that. Actually, on either side of it.
Well, it's interesting. I automate. I've got tons of content, and I automate. I use a couple different tools on top. I use a tool on top of Buffer that actually. I have content that's evergreen, and once a year I go back through that. I do an audit of all my content, usually the last 2 weeks of December, and go look at what's out of date.
I think my brain needs a refresh. My LinkedIn has been that thing you have to throw up there to get a job, and hopefully you don't have to do it that often. And I'm seeing it, which I struggle with. But when I say I really love connecting with people, okay, now it's a connection tool, but I just haven't used it that way because I've thought about it as a job search tool that I have to do. So
Well,
I'm kind of rebooting my own thinking on it.
Mark, while you get that back, I've got a thought, if you
Sure, go
don't
ahead.
mind me jumping in.
Yeah.
So, your stuff is fantastic, but I think you've taken this whole audience kind of 0 to 1,000 miles an hour with becoming creators and podcasts and everything. And I just would, I get a ton of looks on LinkedIn, and my specialty, sales performance management, consulting, software, that kind of thing, is kind of niche and kind of tough to get traction with. But what's worked for me is whenever I've done some content creation as well, but I've written some articles because I have some opinions, as everybody knows.
Oh my God.
But what I like to do is, anybody I know in the business, when they have an article, I read it and I comment on it. And now LinkedIn suggests that you turn that into a post. My comments are a little longer. So if you read other people's articles, share them, comment on them, write a little bit more. That's an easy way to get started with content before you write your own articles or do your own podcast. If you run across articles in your specialty or that are applicable, share them and make some comments about them. You know, this is an interesting article because of this. I thought about this and this. You might want to look at this and this. And you'll get more and more reactions from people in your business. So
Yeah, in
that's
fact,
worked for me.
yeah, the LinkedIn where they suggest, do you want to turn this into a post?
Yep.
That's only a couple months old.
Right. Brand new.
It's brand new. By the way, it's not in the book. And in fact, I
just saw it a week or two ago, in
Yeah.
fact.
Well, it's interesting.
And it works. I tried it once.
Yep.
So
Well, one of the things that happened to me was, gosh, what was it? Someone was, there was a LinkedIn, one of the LinkedIn newsletters there was something about being an expat, something, I don't remember what it was. And I teach an expat course for amava.com. And she emailed me and said, hey, go write a comment and turn it into a post, which I did. And that got all kinds of visibility. And so, particularly if it's on someone who's prominent, that's a great way of just getting people, because all you're really trying to do is get a conversation started.
well, and it occurred to me, I have quite a few decent conversations in messaging on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And you could actually take, with the approval of the person you're messaging back and forth with, you could actually take those messages and turn them into a short conversation in an article. You could ask to interview somebody over messaging, anybody in your network, do an informational interview and turn that into a post. So there are a lot of easy ways to get started. It's for a lot of people, it's tough to become real, creators on something other than maybe in the very niche area of their own job. And most people aren't used to writing about what they do in their job or their opinions of that area. But if people see you as somebody who knows something about your job, not just that you can do the job, but that you are an expert on it and you have opinions and you have a philosophy or an approach or that sort of thing, then they'll scramble to hire you a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, and John, thanks. One of the things I was hoping to do is get people to go get the book and start strategically working through the strategies. Because, and just pick one a day. It'll take you a few months, but it's very thought provoking because, as we said, most of you aren't doing anything on the platform other than you have a profile. And by the way, that's pretty normal these days. And so so I have here Maria, she said, thank you, Mark. Would you be a recommendation to start a podcast for LinkedIn in terms of length? Okay. How long your podcast should be is a lot depend on your audience. I started out trying to keep my podcast to 30 minutes or less. I find that really hard. I keep my interviews to under 30 minutes. The interview section. And so, and this is one of the things we'll question what will happen is the reason why you keep to 30 minutes, because that's a typical drive time. And a lot of people listen to podcasts in the car. They listen when they're out walking the dog. They're out. So the key piece there is don't make them too long. And it's all right for 10 minutes. Any other questions?
Mark, hi, it's Millie Flannery. And I have a
Hey,
question.
Millie.
Hi, Mark. just wanted to make sure I understood and heard what someone said earlier, is that when we do a post on LinkedIn or a poll, that it would be helpful to do it in around the position we want or the industry we want.
Yep.
Correct? So that we can create conversations, so we can possibly get new connections.
Correct.
As you know, and as all the job seekers I'm sure on this Zoom call know, your time is so devoted in job seeking. So it's like, you got to be, like you said, strategic on what you post and how you post it. But the goal is ultimately just to create conversations.
Yeah. So when I post, when I publish a blog post, I post it on all my social media channels. Primarily when I post it to LinkedIn, I then immediately in the first comment tag a few number of people that I really want to read this and give me a comment. And I do that almost immediately. And I have a whole group of influencers that I know that I want them to make a comment on. And if I can get them to do that, and by the way, they don't always do that. And that's okay. But, you know, for example, if you, Millie, what company would you want to go work for?
Ultimately, one of the universities, Texas State, Austin
Okay.
Community College, something like that.
Okay. So what I would, in what department within these universities?
Right now I'm leaning toward training, coaching, teaching in some capacity.
Okay. But in what department?
Probably business related, because that's where
Okay.
my background is accounting.
Okay, then what I would do is if you post something and you have something worthwhile to say, you might tag the person who's responsible within ACC for business, the business curriculum,
That's a good idea.
right?
Yes,
Just
that's a good idea.
be very strategic. And notice, Millie, when I had to kind of dig you down I really want all of you, when I say, where do you want to go work? Be very niche. So I don't have to ask a lot of questions.
Be specific.
By the way, we all do that.
Well, it's helpful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, it's kind of like, as I said, I'm a recovering engineer. I'm very precise with my language. Yeah, there's a 12-step program for that. My wife is a former massage therapist and a nurse. We're polar opposites in our communication style. Okay.
That's
I am, here I am in Mexico, and I walk up to somebody who speaks Spanish, and I'm trying to figure out how much English they understand. Is the topic something I can speak Spanish in? I'm analyzing all this crap. Can I simplify the language I'm using so I'm understood? Or can I speak English? Can I reduce my vocabulary?
Absolutely. Thank you
Okay.
so much for that.
That's
Yeah,
that's
I
the
know
way my
exactly.
brain works.
No, that's congruent for how we speak to other people in informational interviews, contacts, networking events, all that.
Yeah.
Is that we have to get really clear.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I think you have given us tons of food for thought. High calorie food for thought. And we're going to be chewing on it for a long time, but I very much appreciate it. Lots of kudos in the chat box. Lots of action items that we can all take right away. I know I'm going to do a few. I'm going to try to reinvent myself in my new location and see who I end up turning into there.
Well, so Kathy, one of the questions is, do you leave your location as Austin or do you move it to what, Indiana?
Yeah.
Okay. See, my profile still says Austin. but my company is now listed as Guadalajara, Mexico, and Austin.
Right.
Because I don't want to list myself as being in Guadalajara,
No,
right? So,
exactly.
right? So even thinking through this all strategically is really important.